Hi to everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, Malta, depending on which region you're in. Thank you very much for joining my session. I hope you're having a great conference up until now. And I'm pleased that you've joined me to talk about classic blogs in SharePoint and how we have to transition to communication sites because Microsoft decided to deprecate the functionality. So, a couple of slides to start off with. There's a conference coming up in March next year, the Microsoft 365 Collaboration Conference in Las Vegas, Nevada. Make sure that you sign up nice and early to get the discounts. Also, please reach out to our generous sponsors for this event. Check what they can do, what they can help you with in your day-to-day business. If you're interested in winning one of the 3 Oculus Quest all-in-one, please take part in the raffle. Just follow the link below and sign up. Also, thanks to our sponsors, 10% of the funding for this conference will go to community relief. Please check out their sites as well. A great initiative. Just a little bit to myself. My name is Melanie Culver. I'm a consultant and solution architect for Microsoft 365. I've been doing this for more than 15 years now. Of course, not starting with the cloud because at the time SharePoint was only on-prem, but of course the last years heavily moved to working with cloud technologies, not only Office 365 and SharePoint, but also Azure to support any of the processes. I work for an international organization in the internal IT department. And try to help the business improve the way they work on a day-to-day basis with the Microsoft stack. I live in Vienna. I'm part Austrian, part British, so you might hear a little bit of a weird accent, mixing German and English. Okay, what we're going to talk today about. So I want to first give you a quick status quo on what the current situation is and also to set the stage that we're all on the same page. Then I'd like to show you how we can assess the different options of moving away from the classic SharePoint blogs to the communication sites. And then how you can possibly migrate, and then I'll show you hands-on how we do the migration. I will follow up with the Q&A at the end of the session, so I can show you all the demos. I can hopefully give you the answers at the end then. So you're probably here because you have a Lover intranet, probably based on SharePoint publishing sites. It's been there for a while. It has great functionality, but it's starting to be legacy technology, sadly, and especially the blogs. So probably you have blogs either in your intranet or general using it for other functionalities. And you have probably invested a lot of money and now wondering, how can I transition to the communication sites from blogs without spending a fortune? So, as I said, you invested a lot of money, and then suddenly, end of last year, you saw this great message in the message center of your tenant, probably your tenant admin, or you've read it in the media on blogs. So Microsoft announced end of last year that they will be retiring classic SharePoint blogs and also the Delph blogs. The impact for SharePoint is not as bad as for the Delph blogs. So for the SharePoint Classic blogs, this means that already you will see when you create a new blog that it will be postfixed with blogs brackets retired. To be honest, I haven't seen that yet. And with the beginning of July, this year, they will turn off the functionality that you'll be able to provision them through the user interface, but you still be able to do it from an admin perspective. So now what Microsoft suggests is that, as you can see here, either move to communication sites and news, or to Yammer or stream. So what we're going to do here is now actually looking at the possibility of using communication sites to migrate your blogs to. So the question is, how can we do this? No worries, there is a migration path, and I'll show you how you will reach your goal. So I assume you currently have a classic SharePoint publishing site with the publishing features activated, of course. You will have blogs to use to communicate either news or actually using it as a blog where people just report on different topics. You probably have some sort of aggregation functionality. So your blog is down somewhere very far beneath in the structure of your intranet, and you aggregate that information up, for instance, for the homepage. So you maybe have content query web part, a content search, or even a custom JavaScript or any other third-party script to visualize that. And you've probably invested a lot of time and money to get your internet with a nice look and feel, unified user experience. And you probably also have a lot of content in those blogs that you would want to handle in the near future. So what do we do to actually understand what we have, which type of blogs do we have, how many do we have, what is the activity, is it still being used? Then the next step would be to understand how much we've customized our blogs actually. Are we just using them out of the box? Well, good news, should be then fairly straightforward to migrate. If we made some customizations, we might hit some stumblestones. We'll have to look into more detail. Then, of course, if you've understood what you have, you will then have to think about what the different options are, and I'll mention a couple of them. Then you draft the plan and execute the plan. So then it's a classic project approach. So how do I assess how many blogs I actually have in my tenant, in my intranet? So there are two options. Option one is you use the modernizer scanner, which is provided by the PnP team. Or if you're tenant admin and just want to have a quick answer, you actually use search and use this term, the manage property web template, and then blog. And then you get a result of all the blogs you have in your tenant. What is important is that you assess how many blogs you have. Check and see who is the owner of the blog, because of course, when you migrate, you have to engage with that person. Also, it can be very helpful is that blog still used or not, either writing or reading? And of course, what is also important is that you check and see which kind of permissions you've set on your blogs. When it comes to assessing the customizations, you have to understand, have you added any specific fields other than the standard fields, like, I don't know, a publishing picture, for instance, so this roll-up image that the publishing features provide. Then also, have you made any customizations of the look and feel? Maybe there is a business scenario you covered with that JavaScript, just to be clear what you're letting yourself into. Also check and see if you've had any custom layout, as again, any JavaScript that, I don't know, re-rendered certain things or sideload certain content, because that will also have an impact on migration, because I don't know, maybe you're rolling up different content. You'd have to tackle that as well. And this is the one part of assessing which blogs you have. On the other hand, you have to figure out, is there anything that's actually fed from that blog? So as I said, on the homepage, for instance, you're actually grabbing the top blog post from a specific blog. So here, understand how much it's engraved in your current intranet. So let's have a look at how this would look like, how to assess. So first of all, we go for the easy approach. So there's this nice tool. No, I didn't want to start that. Sorry, I want to start this tool. The search query tool. It's quite techy, but I like using it to just use the search. So what I'll do is I'll connect to my tenant. Let me just ignore this for now. I will connect to my tenant. So with two screens, I have to shove over some windows. Provide my credentials. Whoops, that didn't work out. Here you go. And yes, we're fine. And then this is the query. I just hit run, check my primary results, and I see, okay, of course, my demo tenant is very small, so I've identified I have 4 blogs. This gives me just a very high picture of what I have, but we're actually interested in more detail, how many blog posts, the usage, etc. And this is where the Modernizer scanner comes into play. So this is a tool provided by the PnP team. Let me just close a few windows here. So here you have different possibilities of authentication. Again, I'll just use username and password. Username and password. And say next. Then it asks me for my tenant subdomain. I can also just say I want to only crawl certain site collections. So if I know I only want to look on the intranet site collection, that's fine. I can just provide the URL here, or you can just provide a CSV as well. But I'll go and scan everything. Here, with this tool, we can do more assessment, not only for blogs, but you can also scan other aspects of your system, including, for instance, how many publishing portals are you using and things like that. But here we'll focus on the blog usage. And you can say you want to go and scan based on search, which can be good and bad, depending if you, for instance, disabled the indexing on your blog for whatever reason. But we'll go for search because it's nice and easy. And because I'm in Europe, I want to have day, month, year format for the dates. And then we'll just trigger the run. So this now happens in the background. And in the meantime, I'll show you the classic intranet I've created for you as an example. It's not the fanciest, but it serves the purpose. So basically what you can see here, we have our nice slider, we have a news feed, a news from the management, and a tech feed. So these are all based on blogs. So there are classic blog functionalities. So if I click here, I see, okay, this is a normal blog post. The ones that are more fancy, whoops, okay, this is what you have when that happens when you have classic publishing pages, that sometimes the JavaScript doesn't trigger properly. Here I imported the complete SharePoint and OneDrive documentation from GitHub. So I have a nice representative amount of data. So you see I have some text, I have bullet points, I have some images, and there are also some with tables. So there's quite a lot going on here in these blogs, and we will have to migrate those. So in the meantime, let's see if the scan is completed. The pain here with the scan is, to be honest, that it just closes without letting you know. So in the execution directory, you will have a folder. And here you have this nice spreadsheet. That gives you a full report. Let's go in full screen. So we'll enable the content so it becomes more interactive. And once it's loaded, so what is happening is that it's grabbing all the CSVs you saw here into the report. It might take a little while to load. Let's hope it's here. Yes. So as you can see here, we have classic blog type. We have quite a lot of blog posts. So as I said, I imported quite a lot of data. So we have a couple of thousand blog posts actually we would have to migrate. We can see which language. Because I just only recently created the content, I only see the last quarter. But of course, if you have a long history of your blog, you will see the different times here. And of course, what's helpful is here, you get the links of all the blogs you have. And for the people who are really interested, you can actually unhide some hidden sheets. And here you get a full listing of the URLs, which can be helpful. So this report really helps you to assess your existing blogs to be able then to make better decisions. What we still need to understand is what type of customizations do we have on our blogs. So let me open any blog. And here we go into the actual SharePoint list in the back, and we can see that we have actually a couple of customizations. So I've introduced a post priority where I can define if you should be promoted to a homepage or to a slider. It's just a simple choice field. We have a roll-up image, which is very helpful when you aggregate it to a home page. You can add a little icon. So, okay, now we know we have a couple of customizations. Oh, one thing I forgot is the post description. So we just have this small line, 2 lines of text that we can also have for the content aggregation. So with this information now at hand, we have to think about what our opportunities are. So now let's switch back to the slides. These are just some of the options. There are probably some deviations options as well, but basically you have a decision of, I don't want to do anything, because Microsoft is not discontinuing the existing blogs. So if you don't want to create new blogs, stay where you are. Other option would be, as of now, that you create new blogs, and then you have to integrate into your existing intranet. Still a valid option, not saying it's the best, but you can migrate to classic publishing pages, because then you're already in your ecosystem, you know, and you just transition to something which is already set up. Or you say, okay, we want to migrate all our existing blogs to the new communication sites. And this is also the scenario I will show you how that will work. Or, of course, which is also fine, if you say your intranet has been here for a while and it's time for a revamp anyway, then go for the full migration, also valid. So what are the pros and cons? So if you don't do anything, fine, no effort required. But for one, you're missing out on the fun of the communication sites. So there's no modern look and feel you're using. Also keep in mind is that Microsoft will not be investing any money into the existing blogs. And I think they haven't done it for a while. So yeah, no benefits there. And probably something will happen sooner or later that we will have to migrate, which is just more of postponing the action points. You can say as of now, okay, any new blogs I will create in the modern UI. So you will be able to join the fun as of now. But the con or the effort you have to invest is to understand how you can integrate your new blog into your existing intranet. And with the negative points, same as if you don't do anything. So the existing blogs will be in more or less legacy technology, and at some point you will have to take an action. Migrating to classic publishing pages, yes, of course. I mean, it's a system, you know, you just have to grab the content from your blog and move it into a publishing page. You have to create a page layout and maybe also still adjust your aggregation web parts. But to be honest, is it really worth the effort? Because I mean, communication sites are the new thing to go for, and Microsoft is pushing us. So even for the classic publishing sites, they're not really investing any money into improving the functionality. If you decide to migrate all of your existing blogs, in my case with the 4 blogs, but there's a lot of content, you immediately benefit from the communication sites, and this is definitely something that Microsoft is pushing us to do. Drawback is, of course, you will have a migration effort, and you will have effort to integrate your communication sites into your existing intranet. If you decide to go for the approach, we completely want to migrate our intranet, so even classic publishing functionalities, we want to go full on communication sites. Absolutely a good decision, but of course it's a lot of a migration effort, but you still also have to migrate your blogs, and then you have to also migrate your communication site. So it's a big project where you can work on. That's also fine. Just weigh the options, which would be the best. Just some considerations and thoughts. You don't have to do a big bang migration. This is also even something Microsoft recommends. Start with small parts. Maybe start with 1 blog or 2 blogs, migrate them, get used to the communication sites, make sure that you have your branding in place, integrate those things into your existing intranet, and then just slowly but surely transition. So maybe you'll start with 1 blog, 2 blogs, and over time you can restructure sub-sites to communication sites and reintegrate those. So you can go for a slow transition as well. Valid, and it's not a big bang. But keep in mind, you will have a break in look and feel. An important thing to mention is there is a big difference between communication sites and classic publishing functionalities, which is basically the technical structure. There are no more sub-sites for communication sites. A communication site is basically a site collection. What you will definitely have to do is define a new look and feel. So a really good source for this is the lookbook, SharePoint lookbook, where you can get free templates basically that you can provision into your tenant, play around with it to see how you could actually design your new complete intranet or just your blog communication site. Also think about the permission model. Also something that more or less changes because you're moving this to a separate site collection, you can then be more specific when setting permissions, or it's at least easier to handle. Okay, so we've had some train of thoughts. We can now hopefully have a decision come up where we want to go. So now it's up to you to actually draft a plan, how, depending on which approach you take, to go for implementation, and then you just execute the plan and do the transition, or stay put, which is okay. But of course, we're here because we want to know and see how a transition to communication sites can actually work. So this is a screenshot from the lookbook. This is how your new intranet or just only your new blog could look like. If it's a blog, it's probably not as cluttered as this screenshot, but it's just a modern user experience. So the specific to communication sites. So they're new, but actually they're not really that new. They've been around for a while. As I mentioned, the communication site technically is a separate site collection. So when you create one, it's completely decoupled from any other site collection. But what you can do is introduce so-called hub sites. So to get this technical architecture you probably still have in your intranet, you can have a hub site and join those other communication sites. But I have 2 slides on that later. The communication sites have a modern design, a great look and feel, pro con, whatever your opinion you have. You can't customize it as much as you're used to in publishing sites. So you can't just create your content editor web part and hack some JavaScript to just move some buttons around or have nice things. Microsoft is, of course, pushing us more into using the SharePoint framework app model, with the benefit that if Microsoft upgrades its platform, things don't break, because having all this JavaScript flying around, it doesn't guarantee that it won't break. So keep that in mind. It is a change of mindset when you work with communication sites. Custom page layouts, yes, they've been introduced, but they're not as evolved yet as the classic publishing sites page layouts. So yeah, this is something you just have to consider also when you do a migration. How much control do you want to have about the design of each of your blog posts? They're not as restrictive yet as the publishing sites. Okay, just talking about the technical structure, because it does mean that you have to rework your technical architecture when it comes to your intranet. So let's assume you went for the conservative way to say, okay, you have one site collection at the top, and then you have multiple sub-sites, sub-sites, depending on how deep you went, and a lot of pages, and somewhere you have your blogs flying around. So here we have our blogs, these 2 and this one. That's how it was done in the past. Or you even have separate site collections per department, but let's assume we went for this approach. So now what will happen if you move to communication sites is that you're gonna have to rip apart your technical structure into separate site collections, which are these boxes. And within those site collections, you can then create your content pages. And this is something Microsoft is heavily investing in, is that they're actually using search to grab the content from the other sources. So you can then have, so we have our 3 blogs here, which are then aggregated into a news page. So we can just use the search and visualize the content in this new intranet hub site. So mentioning hub sites, so you can have multiple hub sites. So let's say we want to have each department should have their hub site. They're the owner, they're the content owners, they're responsible and accountable for the content. And based on so-called contracts, so you have a certain set of metadata, the content can actually be surfaced up into the intranet. So it's a little different, and it's a change of mindset on how you work with an intranet, and you're pushing responsibility probably more to the business as you might have done in the past. Maybe you've already established this and then it's fine. You just have a new communication site with a different permission model. Okay, so now let's get to work. How do we actually migrate? So there's just one simple PowerShell command that you can use. So the PnP team has extended the functionality of their commandlets, where you can now also fairly easily transform blogs into modern pages. Same as for publishing sites as well, but here in specific, we're talking about the blogs. So that's basically all you need. With this statement, you transform one single post and save it into the new communication site. You'll find the resources here, and they're quite good documentation on how to use these things. So before we start, and I'll show you how you can do this. Important first step is you create your new communication site for your blog you want to migrate, and then you prepare your communication site. So for instance, you add your custom columns that you will need. You might want to already start designing your homepage, so adding the right web parts, which is only half the fun if you don't have any content. But you have to do a little bit of pre-work, and then it's all about just executing the PowerShell script to transform each of your pages. So in the scenario I just showed you, so we have our classic intranet with our blog posts. And so here you see one of our blog posts. You have text, you have images, which will then be transformed into a new communication site where I've configured nice aggregation on the home page with the standard functionality you have with the communication sites. And also with the script, it now transforms your your blog post into a news post in the communication site. So it grabs the text, it grabs the images, and it grabs the tables. Okay, so let's switch over to the actual how do I do this. So first of all, just so you know, we're just going to create a new post in our intranet. Oops. So we go here into our blog, and the management blog. This is the small one, which makes it easier to demo. So we create a blog post here, and we call it last year's review, and some text we want to transform. And we'll add a picture from SharePoint. I like airplanes. Let's take an airplane. Maybe we want to resize this so it's not that big. Okay, a little better. So we pick the category, publish date, that's fine. And now we will also pick a roll-up image. I think we also have a helicopter. Yeah, let's take the helicopter. Yep. Now let's give it a rendition. This was really helpful in the past. Zip, so we have a nice roll-up image on the home page, and some text. Not very creative, and we could select a different priority, but actually we're fine here now. So we created this. And now we actually have to create our new communication site where we want to store this new blog post. So what we'll do is we go here to SharePoint. I like opening as a new tab. Create. whoops, nope, new communication site. So we say management blog, finish. And I just left with a standard template for now. Okay, so now we have our new communication site where we want to migrate the things to. So as I said, we now have to start preparing this target page. So we go into the pages library and we add our custom columns. So first of all, we will add the post description. And since I'm pedantic when it comes to naming, when I create a new site column, I always first create a technical name and then I change it to a display name because it just makes it a lot easier to handle with search. Then we also have this very important thing of post category. So here we'll create a choice field, post category. We had which type of categories? Events, ideas, and opinions. Events, ideas, opinions. You could probably also leave this and just say add values manually, and then the migration script will just automatically populate this, but we'll go for this for now. Then something that was important to us in the past is actually the publishing date. So we will also add the publishing date, so date. So the internal name was called publish date. Sorry, I'm just copy and pasting that. I don't have any typos. This also included a time. Create this, and we'll have an image roll up because we want to also have this. I'm creating this as a multi-text line. I will explain to you later on when I show you the big script why I'm doing this. Okay, so I think then basically we're good to go. So now what we're going to do is pull up our PowerShell and connect to this to the original blog we want to migrate. So it's this one. So I go connect PnP online dash URL credentials. I have already authenticated. Okay, and then we execute this command I showed you, convert to PnP client side, is quite long, client side page. And now what we tell him, we want to migrate this specific blog post. So we say identity, and we use the display name of this. Zip, I should put this under quotation marks. And then we add another couple of parameters to be more specific. So we're handling a blog page. If we already have something, we want to overwrite it. So if you see you have some migration issues, you can just repetitive override this. So in the target URL now, we're going to tell the system where to create this new page. And we want to have it created over here. And then we want to say we want to keep the page creation information. That could also be very helpful to see. We want to post it as a news message. Sorry, I have my cheat sheet. I don't miss anything. Set author in page header, and very important, copy our custom metadata because it was helpful for us for our aggregation web parts. So now it will kick off, grab the old blog post, transform it, and push it into the new communication site. So if I refresh this page now, we have our new page, a blog post. So we have our metadata copied, except for this, and I'll tell you about that later. And now if we look at this, okay, we have a big image, not quite that what we're expecting. So these are the things where you then have to tweak your overall script to handle these things. But basically what it does, it reverts to the native structure of the modern communication sites. Okay, so we've converted one single thing, which is, if we do it for every single post, not fun. So now let me show you a bigger script that does more. So here we have a PowerShell script, and this is again provided by the PnP team, which basically connects to your source site. and iterates through all the blog posts and calls this command for every single post. So one drawback I saw is that after it's converted, it doesn't return me the object that it actually converted. And to do more manipulation afterwards, I had to go through a second cycle of all the newly created posts. So that is also why I'm capturing the publish date. So why am I doing this? It took me a while to figure out, but and I actually digged into the source code of the whole conversion in GitHub to understand. They've decided to do not copy hidden fields, and one of them is the publish date. So if I want to have this in my blog post, I'm actually grabbing it from the original post, storing it in an array, and then on my second run of post-processing the migrated scripts, I actually then set this publish date down here. So I again just iterate through all the new posts, and I have my custom field with publish date and set it on the new site. And here I also mentioned I created this roll-up image as a text because, again, there's no native migration. So I was fine with, OK, let's give me the HTML, and then I'll just grab out the image URL. I'll do some processing so I can grab the image, download the image, and store it to the asset library. I have a small function that does that for me, but I believe you will understand what it does. And then now what I can do is I use this roll-up image actually to set the header of the communication site page, because this is a nice functionality. So if you already have these roll-up images, why not reuse it for the header? Again, this heavily depends on the quality of images you're using, but I think it's a nice scenario we can look into. OK, so let's execute this for our small little blog we have, the management blog. So we call this script Migrate blogs. We have the source is this one. So this time we're going to migrate everything. And the target is this one. And it also, of course, wants credentials. And now the script runs and transforms all the posts, the 3 we have, I think. And then does the post processing of also extracting the publish date and the roll-up image. OK, let it work for a while. In the meantime, oh, well, it's nearly finished. I think that should be done fairly fast. But yes, perfect. So now if I refresh this page, you'll see we've migrated all of these. And we also have this roll-up image now up in the top. So I know this is a very small and simple scenario, but if we have a look at the transformed ones I already created. So for instance, I migrated the SharePoint knowledge base also into a modern site. And I've completely leveraged the functionality we have out of the box and with the PnP modern search, where I have a lot of blog posts here that I transformed in the pages library, if you can see here. And purely through using this search, I can now have an overview of all my articles. So these are actually former categories, and I can switch between the different content here. So I've created my own new landing page for the blog posts I have in here. So instead of having this long list to scroll through, I decided to go for this tabbed view. And this is just SharePoint PnP modern search I used here. It's just about a matter of configuring search verticals where you preset queries, and then it's easy for you to switch to and from. But of course, yeah, we would actually want to now integrate it into our classic page. So all of this is captured, and the custom columns we have, we actually also captured them as managed properties. So we have a mapping to refinable string 0 and 1 and 2 and 3. And on the home page of the intranet, we're also using this functionality. So let's say we completely want to, now we've migrated and now we want to switch this one to this new source. So all I have to do, in theory, hopefully, let's see, is change the query. Because we're still using the same managed properties, so the URL has now changed. I want to filter for the specific content type. And now if I say test query, we're getting the same content, but migrated. So let me, yes, I want to check in the page. And yes, I still have to do some work on the visualization, but I think you get the point that now when you look at the URL at the bottom, and if I click on it, it actually now directly takes me into the modern UI, but the homepage is still the same. You just have to make sure that you configure the web part correctly. If you're using custom JavaScript, then of course you have to point to the right URL as well. There might be some more tweaking you have to do, but ideally it's not as dramatic. And also a nice thing is that you can have a common navigation. So if you're working with a hub site model, for all the new communication sites, you join them to a hub site and you can share a common navigation. And in the classic intranet, and here I still have my jump back point, you have the same navigation with the drawback that you have to maintain it twice, but the experience is more fluent than if you just create them all over the place and there's no joining the two new worlds. So if you've used search, it's fairly easy. Maybe if you have custom web parts with JavaScript, you might have to just tweak the JavaScript that do the content rollup, but it shouldn't be that bad. And as I said, with the search and the news, I think I also have a little news center here to watch the time. You can also fairly easily create new landing pages and actually grab content from the internet, because here we're actually grabbing an event from the classic, if you see. So you can join these in both directions with standard components and the PnP search. Okay, now let's switch back to finalize. So I hope you saw how more or less easy it can be to migrate. If we use web parts, it's just a matter of changing the configuration, either JavaScript or search, and search display templates, depending on what you were using. Ideally, there are only minor adjustments you have to do for your existing intranet. And also really nice and helpful would be to have a hub site that joins the new sites and the classic sites, because you have a common navigation, although you have to maintain it twice. And of course, it's not as easy as it looks. Of course, the migration could be more complex. The PnP engine does its best to transform the content to the modern experience. So, but it's not as fluent, because you probably noticed that if you have a picture and it's overflown with content, this is not something that's yet supported in the modern UI. So you will have picture, text, picture, text. So it really dissects the content from text and images and tables. So you have separate web parts in the modern page, which then applies to the second bullet point here, is the page structure will change. There may be, of course, additional effort required when it comes to the transformation. As I said, I also had to introduce the second step of transforming, grabbing additional metadata and transforming it the way I need it to be processed. Also, a big drawback we stumbled across is that, yes, you have comments and likes in the classic, and yes, you have them in the modern, but currently there's no migration path because it's a completely different technology stack. So keep that in mind, that might happen. As mentioned, there is this issue of hidden fields not being copied by the commandlet, but it's something you can do in the post scripting. And something I stumbled across, which was quite annoying, is that I made changes to the script and I executed it and it didn't reflect on my communication site because there's caching implemented. It took me a while to figure that out, because then I was frustrated, closed the PowerShell, reopened it, and then it worked. So if you don't see changes reflecting, that might be the reason. So what are the changes that will come if you move to the communication sites for your blogs? Yes, look and feel will be different. The page layouts are not as restrictive as you're used to. You will have a switch between modern and classic UI. It's just something you cannot avoid, but it might be a good reason to slowly transition and get users used to the new look and feel. As I mentioned, the navigation, it will look different. You will have to maintain two for a while, but I think that's a small cost for bringing the people into one hub. At least they feel they're still in one intranet. Also, something that is not possible at the moment is currently in the classic blogs, you were able to pre-publish content without it being published. This is something that's not available in the communication sites, at least not at the moment, as far as I know. Final thoughts. I would highly recommend look into the communication sites, familiarize yourself, and don't be scared. Start migrating them. The PnP community has good scripts that will really, really help you transition and speed things up. Of course, there's still effort to it, but it's not as bad. And as I mentioned, start small, start with a blog or two, which you have under control, migrate them, see how it goes for you, and then make the minor changes and start from there. Thank you very much for listening. I'll go and check if there are any questions you have posted. So there are some Q&As. So let me check. Just looking at the right time slot. There was a question of, can I post an example of the PowerShell commandlet? I think I've shown it to you now in the slides, and I also executed this. Another question, is it possible to get a copy of the modified mass PowerShell script you showed in the demo? This is actually just basically a copy from the PnP team, to be honest. So it was part of here. So if you go to one of those two links, I will share them in your question, and you can have a look at those. Okay, I think that was it. No more questions. So I thank you very much for listening. And I hope you have some things to take back home with you and not feel too scared of migrating now to the modern communication sites. I think it's really worth the effort. Thank you. Bye.